Wenjun starts the game with e4. Tan Zhongyi responds with c5. And 2025 Women World Championship match has begun. Zhu, the challenger, continues with knight f3, and Tan, the current world champion, plays e6. We have a Sicilian defense. White continues with d4, exchange of the pawns on d4, knight takes d4, and knight jumps to f6, attacking the pawn on e4. The most popular move for white in this position is knight c3. And that happens in 90% of the games, really. But white plays bishop d3. A little unusual move in this position, but obviously makes sense protecting the pawns on e4. Knight c6. Exchange of the knights on c6, and bishop goes to f4. We have a typical position in Sicilian defense when black has a very strong black square bishop, a very weak light square bishop because it's surrounded by the pawns standing on white squares, and white have no issues with development on their pieces. Two bishops are well positioned, knight will get into the game, they will castle, and black will try to equalize this game as black always do. d5, immediate strike in the center, knight d2, developing the knight, and g6. And this move is made not because black wanted to put the bishop on g7, because bishop will feel very well on squares d6 or c5 or e7. This move was made in order to threaten the move knight h5, to immediately attack the bishop on f4. And actually, that wouldn't be very pleasant for white, and that's why Zhu Wenjun played bishop g5. She moved the bishop again, which is normally not recommended in the opening, to move the same piece twice, but in this case it was justified, and the knight on f6 is pinned. h6, immediately asking the question where the white bishop would go, and it went back to h4. Bishop e7. Obviously, you don't want to play bishop g7 because after e5, black is gonna lose the knight. So bishop e7, castle for white, and a5 for Tan Zhongyi, the world champion. The reason she made this move, she wants to exchange her weak bishop, light square bishop that's currently on c8, for a strong bishop on d3. And she will do this by moving the bishop on a6 and forcing the exchange of light square bishops. White obviously sees this idea and prevents it by moving the queen to e2. And now you cannot play bishop a6 because it would simply be grabbed by bishop takes a6, protecting by the queen. Castle for black, rook goes to open file d, semi-open file, and Tan Zhongyi plays knight d7, offering the exchange of black squared bishop. White takes on e7, queen takes e7, and c4, challenging strong black center. Now black don't want to take the pawn on e4, for example, because after bishop takes e4, they would have isolated pawns, and the pawn on c6 would be under immediate pressure and attack from the bishop. So instead of that, black just plays knight e5. Very logical move, keeping the pressure in the center and threatening to take the bishop on d3. Pawn takes d5, knight takes d3, queen takes d3, pawn takes d5, and queen e3. After those exchanges, we have a position in which both sides have 6 pawns, 2 rooks, and a knight against a bishop. Queen g5. Black realized here that although this move would double up their pawns, which is normally not a good thing to do. But they calculated very precisely that this position would be even. And that's what basically black wanted to achieve. Because after queen takes g5, h takes g5, c takes d5, e takes d5, we have a position in which black has isolated pawns on d5 and a5. And seemingly white is better because they would just start attacking those isolated pawns, and also the pawn on g5, g6, those are double pawns. Knight would go to f3, will attack pawn on g5, the rook will be attacking the pawn on d5. But here it's important in this position that the world champion playing black calculated and realized that she has an initiative in this position because she has a bishop, and bishop is a faster piece and can cover more ground than the knight. In the open positions, bishop is better. Plus open file b for the rook to attack the pawn on b2. And all these factors make the position overall even. Rook e1, rook goes to b8 immediately, challenging the pawn on b2, b3 protecting that pawn, and g4, gaining more space for black. Knight goes to f1, which is another logical move, with the idea to go knight e3, also attacking the pawn on d5. Now if black will start playing very passively here and start protecting the pawn with moves like bishop e6, they will have problems. They will have a position where they will be standing around, their pieces would be glued to protecting their pawns, and not quickly, but slowly but surely, white could take advantage of that. Therefore, the idea for black to play active chess here. And they play a4. And that's exactly the best move in this position. B takes a4. White has an extra pawn, but it's temporarily, because after rook b4, black pieces activate and start attacking white pawns. a5, rook a4, attacking the pawns on a5 and a2. Rook takes d5, bishop e6, attacking the rook, activating the bishop. The rook moves to c5, black takes the pawn on a2, and although white has an extra pawn, seemingly a good pawn on a5, which is a passing pawn, it cannot really be protected, because after knight e3, rook a8, white are gonna lose the pawn on a5. Knight d5, rook takes a5, rook takes a5, rook takes a5, knight f4. We have a position of 3 pawns against 3 pawns, rook against rook, knight against bishop, and this is a theoretical draw. Obviously, on this level, and those two ladies are the best in the world, this would be a draw. And it quickly followed by bishop f5, h3, exchange of the on the pawns of h3, exchange again on h3, and king g7, king g2, couple of checks, the position is repeated, and both players agreed to a draw, and the first game of the World Championship match 2025 ended in a draw. Second game is tomorrow, and I'll be back covering this game. Until then, thank you for watching.